Good evening, everyone. Before we begin this hearing on proposed changes to Section 3109 of the Columbus Municipal Code, I just want to thank a few folks before we get started. Want to thank Department of Neighborhoods Director Carl William Scott, also representatives from the department, Todd Diefendorfer, Toya Johnson, David Huey, thank you for being here tonight. My colleague, Councilmember Manuel Remy, for joining us this evening as well. Want to thank all the area commissioners who are here in attendance this evening, those who took the time to travel down to City Hall tonight, those who've contacted my office over the past several weeks, phone, email, and those who are watching this evening or either on television or streaming online. I do want to remind folks here that if they wish to speak at tonight's hearing, they need to fill out a speaker slip, which are available in the back. Before the public testimony portion of the hearing. The purpose of this hearing, again, is to review and comment on proposed changes to Section 3109 of the Columbus Code and how those changes would affect our city's area commissions. This hearing is available to live stream on CTV website and broadcast on Spectrum, Channel 1024, WOW, Channel 3, AT&T Uverse, and Channel 99. This video will also be posted on the City of Columbus YouTube channel following tonight's event. Our goal here is to assist area commissioners in their important work being voices for our neighborhoods all across the City of Columbus. The purpose here tonight is to gather feedback on these proposed code changes and deliver a comprehensive strategy to strengthen all of our area commissions across the city. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Director William Scott to introduce our presenters. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Dorans and Councilmember Remy and members of the community that are here with us. Again, thank you for having us here this evening as we share with you the work that we've been doing regarding proposed code changes to 3109. And if I could, I'd like to just start off with kind of a brief summary of what brought us to this point. Again, thank you for this the opportunity to be here. We have been working with the area commissions and our colleagues in council for the last 18 months and to share with you our proposed code changes to 3109, which governs area commissions, and some best practices guidelines that will aid the area commissions in their work moving forward. The Department of Neighborhoods was the vision of Mayor Ginther to provide support to our residents in all neighborhoods in the City of Columbus, and we do this through our community planning work, the 311 Customer Service Center, and our neighborhood liaisons and neighborhood pride centers, providing staff support to our 21 area commissions. During our first year as a department, we heard consistently from our area commissions that they wanted a more targeted assistance from the department to help them with their role as area commissioners. With that feedback, we began on the path that would do just that. In early 2018, the Department of Neighborhoods conducted an area commission survey for all commissioners to assess resources and support that area commissions needed to improve operational efficiencies. In the spring of 2018, we held our first area commission retreat with area commission leadership and Department of Neighborhood staff to discuss results of the survey and seek additional feedback. Major topics or themes that were shared by the area commissioners included training, standardized operating procedures and bylaws, and development and website development. Through June through November of 2018, Department of Neighborhoods and Council engagement identified possible code changes, in the City Attorney's Office, identified possible code changes to 3109, examined best practices across all area commissions, and created a standardized bylaws template. The Department of Neighborhoods then held a retreat with area commission leadership and Department of Neighborhood staff to present the proposed code changes to 3109 and best practices. We collected feedback from all area commissions through written forms, letters, phone calls, emails, and discussions of individual meetings with commissioners and discussions at area commission meetings. In spring of 2019, we presented proposed code changes to 3109 and best practices to City Council. With the addition of new council members and area commissioners because of elections, we continue to gather feedback and input to ensure that everyone had the benefit of all information and conversations that had taken place. Through this summer and this fall of 2019, the department and Columbus City Council held a series of community meetings with all area commissioners invited to participate to further assess the needs of our area commissions and discuss the proposed code changes and best practices. Department staff presented final code changes to 3109 and a summary of best practices at all of the November area commission meetings and presented legislation regarding the code changes to 3109 and best practices bylaws template to Columbus City Council in November. Informed by what the area commissioners have shared with us, we want to move forward with 3 important steps that will help residents, neighborhood groups, developers, businesses, property owners, and city staff have consistent experiences and expectations for engagement with all Columbus area commissions. The code change will standardize the length of commissioner term, as well as cap the number of area commissioners that may serve on an area commission. Passage of this legislation will help area commissions address quorum issues and ensure every member is eligible to fully participate in every meeting. The code change recommendation will also standardize all commission terms to 3 years and again provide a cap the maximum number of commissioners per organization at 17. The Department of Neighborhoods will release recommended best practices that have been developed based on area commission feedback, the Ohio Revised Code, and the Columbus City Code. The best practices will help to ensure compliance with applicable laws, build skills, boost the level of dialogue in meetings, and encourage succession planning among our area commissions. During 2020, the department will work with all area commissions to identify those willing to partner with us to pilot the adoption of the best practices. Those area commissions that join the pilot will assist us in identifying further improvements to the best practices. A best practices bylaws template will be made available to all area commissions in the coming weeks. The Department of Neighborhoods will continue to offer a series of trainings to all area commission members based on our feedback from our empowerment sessions and conversations with area commissioners as well. Training topics will focus on those subject areas that commissioners told us were of greatest interest in the surveys and outreach sessions. Trainings will also provide members valuable information to help with onboarding of new members. We will work with our council colleagues to explore various training platforms to ensure that we are making this training as convenient as possible for all the area commissions. We will release a full 2020 training schedule later this month as our team is continuing to work on that. We will also develop a uniform web platform for effective and consistent websites. We expect to make details of the website project available during the first quarter of next year with the passage of the 2020 budget by our friends in council. Again, we thank you for this opportunity, and I would like to again give a special thank you to all of our area commissioners and community leaders that gave of their time and provided very candid feedback regarding this work. Special thanks to David Huey, Troy Johnson, Todd Diefendorfer from our team, and Councilmember Dorans and your staff and the council community engagement staff. I would now like to turn this over to Todd Diefendorfer and David Huey so they can walk you through the code changes and best practices.
Great. Thank you, Director. Councilmember, members of council, appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit more detail on our proposal tonight. As Director William Scott outlined, it's really a 3-step process we're using to provide support to the area commissions. So this ordinance 2952, 2019, the bylaw best practices, and also technical support. So that's the training and the website work. As Director William Scott noted, these things were all put together really through that in-depth engagement through surveys and in-person engagement and other meetings with the area commissions. I'm going to start tonight with the code change. Of this 3-part package, this is the one piece that we are asking for council's approval of, and so that's what's included in the legislation. The first part of this will help to remove confusion regarding commissioner terms, appointment status, and ability to vote by standardizing commissioner terms to 3 years. So right now, there's a range available, but this just, on a going forward basis, will make sure that all commissioner terms are a standard 3 years. The second piece of this will help to ensure that all commission seats can be filled and meeting quorums achieved by capping the number of commissioners per commission at 17. We are not proposing any change to the minimum. Right now, it offers 7 as the minimum. We're not making a request to change that, but just the maximum there. If this legislation is passed, this piece around the number of commission members, commissions would have until January of next year to implement that change. The final part of this, of the 3 pieces in the legislation, the final part is really more of a cleanup item. It's just making clear the role of the Department of Neighborhoods with area commissions, whereas the Department of Development did that previously. So view that more as a cleanup item. The second piece of the proposal are the recommended best practices. So again, that's not something that we're asking for council approval of, but sharing that actually for the first time tonight, at least in the form that we're moving them forward. Elements of the best practices have been shared with area commissions throughout this process and gaining feedback and making further revisions and enhancements to that going forward. For ease of use, we're presenting them really in the form of bylaws as a way for groups to work through that and implement them in an easiest way possible. As Director noted, these best practices in the bylaws are created based on area commissioner input, Ohio Revised Code, and Columbus City Code, and they will help to ensure compliance with applicable laws, build skills, boost the level of dialogue in meetings, and encourage succession planning. Now I'd like to turn it to David Huey, who is our resident expert in this area and has been a real leader for us in this work to walk through the elements of the best practice bylaws.
Thank you, members of council. Is that on? Yeah. Thank you, members of council and my team, and to the area commissioners. Again, we developed these best practices over the last 2 years, and what you have tonight is what we've come up with. We've shared most of this information with you before, and they're best practices that we recommend, and we hope that you adopt them. The best practices will ensure compliance with Ohio's public record law by requiring use of the Department of Neighborhood's approved records retention schedule. It'll increase the understanding and enhance skills by requiring all new area commissioners to attend an orientation training class, and newly elected chairpersons, vice chairpersons, and zoning chairpersons to attend two zoning training classes within 1 year of appointment or election. Boost the level of dialogue and decorum in meetings by providing a code of conduct governing individuals and the organization as a whole. It will also include language regarding conflicts of interest. It will encourage succession planning by establishing a 6-year term limit for chairpersons. Individuals who reach 6-year term limit can remain on the commission and return to a leadership role after 3 years. A chairperson's 6-year term limit may be extended by a 3/4 majority vote. Establish a standard timeline for elections. The elections would occur prior to September 30, and terms would end on December 31. We will, as the director also said, we'll be working on a landing page website for all the area commissions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director William Scott and the rest of the team from the Department of Neighborhoods. Want to acknowledge Council President Hardin has joined us this evening, so thank you for being here, sir. At this time, I'm going to ask a few questions of the department, then allow my colleagues the same opportunity. I think some of these questions were probably answered during that presentation, but want to have the opportunity to provide a little bit of clarification and or sort of drill down to it a little bit more for folks to understand. I also wanted to remind folks that I know we had some people who arrived during the presentation. If you're interested in making public comment, there are speaker slips in the back of the room. Please make sure those are filled out prior to the public comment portion of the hearing. There's also a copy of the proposed code changes, and there's also a copy of the best practices template provided by the Department of Neighborhoods. And wanted to ask that initially to the department as well, just to maybe for a second clarify the difference between the code changes which are being proposed that will come before council at our next meeting and the best practices template that you all provided this evening. If you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about what's being proposed and what's mandatory potentially and what would not be mandatory based upon that template, if the department wouldn't mind answering that.
Thank you for that question. Really, in the code change, it's just speaking to the 3-year terms and the maximum number of members on a commission. That maximum number, if that were to be approved, that commissions would have a year to put that into place. The best practices bylaws are something, again, we're distributing those this evening, and the neighborhood liaisons will be reaching out to area commissions to talk with them about that. We want to work hand in hand with those who are interested to put those best practices into place, help them with technical support, training, and other things that they need to make a smooth transition to do that. And then in addition, we're excited as we have this group of area commissions that are adopting this to work with them to identify are there additional changes, additional things we can put into those best practices to enhance them further going forward.
Thank you. One of the things that we heard a lot during the Area Commission Empowerment Tour was the desire for more training and different types of training. And Mr. Hui referenced, change in the website platform for Area Commission. Can you talk a little bit about how the department's planning to address both of these very important issues that I think a lot of the folks in this room who attended those hearings brought up to us?
Absolutely. So thank you, Councilmember. We will be building on the training series that we started this year. This year we held 12 sessions, and we will do so again in 2020. Topics will include things such as Robert's Rules of Order, cultural competence, the zoning process, implicit bias, diversity training. Those are some of the things that we heard through the empowerment tour. We're working with consultants to develop those contracts, and we'll have that full schedule later this month. In addition, was your other question about the website?
Website, yeah.
About the website. Yes, and the same thing there. We have asked for requested funding in our 2020 budget to do that, and so our budget was approved in the budget that the mayor presented to council, and so if our friends in council approve our budget, we will have funding in 2020 to work with a consultant again to help develop a landing page for the area commissions. We're trying to figure out what that would look like because we know there are different skill levels across the board. Some are more technologically savvy than others. I am not one of those technologically savvy individuals. So we're trying to find something that area commissions can maintain on their own and that it would be pretty easy to do.
Thank you. One of the proposed code changes calls for a maximum number of 17 commissioners per commission. Based on current seating, this would affect at least 3 different area commissions. Is the department thought of raising the number to accommodate these specific area commissions?
We have identified, as you mentioned, there are 3 area commissions that currently have a maximum over 17, 2 at 20, 1 at 21. Of the 21 area commissions, the other 18 have numbers that are below that. And so our team has talked about working with our area commissions to kind of help them figure out how to transition to the 17 number. And if it becomes something that's unwielding, we're certainly willing to address that on a case-by-case basis.
Sure. So Deputy Director mentioned earlier there's a minimum number for folks for area commissioners. Any thought process to utilizing that as the guidepost here rather than having a maximum number of members?
I'm not sure what you mean. The minimum is 7.
Right.
And so all area commissions, as the way the code reads now, that our area commissions can have, is it between 7 and 20 and 21? And so you have to have at least 7. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess my question is, rather than capping it, rather than having a change to the maximum number of folks on the commission, having a changing the minimum number up.
we didn't have that conversation, but I'm not sure that would help some of the area commissions address some of the issues and concerns that some of our area commissions have had in terms of being able to fill seats and then to be able to operate at quorum. When they are unable to do that, that inhibits their ability to conduct business in the community, especially in terms of taking votes and whatnot. But we haven't looked at the minimum number, but I'm sure it's something that could be addressed.
And Director, I was wondering if you could speak to that quorum issue. I know that's something that's come up pretty regularly with some of the discussions. I wonder if you or the Deputy Director could just speak to quorum as an issue for area commissions in general, as something to tackle to make sure that they're effective in the future.
Absolutely. So when we did kind of a matrix of looking at the area commissions that have a maximum number and the number of seats that they actually have filled. And currently, area commissions are averaging about 13 on the maximum number of seats, with about an average of 11 seats filled. And so that would allow them to stay at quorum. And so it was our belief that if we reduce the maximum number and commissions were able to fill those seats, that they would more easily be able to have quorum and be able to effectively operate. Again, when there isn't quorum and folks aren't there, that means that things may get tabled or may get pushed back, which then can impact a lot of the progress or votes that they may need to take.
Sure, thank you. You know, I'm aware that the department worked quite a bit to develop the best practices template that's available here at the hearing tonight. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit to the department's plan to help commissions review those and potentially take action to implement some of those recommendations, and if the department could talk about you know, whether or not adopting those template is required or whether that's optional for commissions.
Thank you, Councilman. Each of the neighborhood liaisons will work with their assigned commissions for those commissions that want to adopt the best practices. We will work with each one of the liaisons will work with them on getting that done. And again, these are voluntarily adopted best practices, and you can adopt some of them or all of them. We hope they adopt all of them, but yeah, we'll provide support to each of the commissions for that.
So just to underscore that point, so everyone's crystal clear, the adoption of the template recommendations, that is optional for commissions, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Speaking of the template itself, obviously it goes through a variety of different best practices. Some of these are pulled directly from commissions right now that are having a lot of success with the way that they operate in different areas. So those are, you know, ways that the folks have been successful in the past. If we see, you know, a large amount of area commissions adopt some of these recommendations, see a significant amount of success, do you see the department in the future potentially coming back to council to ask for code changes to get everyone on board with those ones that have been successfully adopted in most places?
Councilmember, yes, I think we could see that, and then we may also want to explore other options, such as administrative rules and that format. Our guidance from the city attorney's office was to try to make this as least restrictive as possible. And so if we put a lot of things in the code, then any time that we wanted to make a change, it would require legislation and it would require an amendment to the code. After the pilot, there may be some things that we may see that we think absolutely it makes sense to add to the code, and then we may want to explore other options as well. But there is a possibility that we could come back. And again, we would certainly not be doing that in a vacuum, but also with feedback from council and from our area commissioners as well.
Sure. I think Mr. Hui already touched on this, but I just want to ask it to make sure that everyone's clear. So if these code changes are passed next Monday by council, what are the next steps for each of the area commissions at this point?
Each area commission would have through January of 2021, I can't believe I'm saying 2021 already, to make the changes needed to comply with the code change. And then the liaisons will engage with each commission regarding the adoption of recommended best practices and the bylaws template. But they would in essence have a year to make that, and so that would give each area commission an opportunity to have gone through a full cycle of an election to begin to implement those code changes.
Okay. Thank you, Director. At this point, I'd like to ask my colleagues if they have any questions they would like to ask the department. Council President Harden?
Well, thank you, Chair, and I'm sure it has already been said since I was late coming to the hearing, how much this council appreciates each and every one of the commissioners and the commissions. It's inspiring to us. The work that you do is voluntary. You do it just because you love your neighborhood, you love your community, you see an issue, and you work to fix it. This council sees you as a partner, and so that's why we are here, to listen, to encourage, to empower, but to make sure that you have all the best tools that you can have to make sure that the work that you're doing gets here to council and serves the purpose in which we all hope, which is to advise this council and to represent your neighbors. And so I just appreciate the leadership of Chair Dorans and the department. Again, it might have already been articulated, but to me, what I think is important is communication and engagement. Has someone done an overview of what kind of engagement we've had over this process over the last several months? So we talked about that specifically. Okay.
Yes, Council President, we did. We talked about the time frame on getting started and kind of how we had done the surveys and outreach to the area commissioners. And then with the addition of, by that time, we were now at the beginning of 2019. And so there were new council members on board, and there were new area commissioners on board because most of the area commissions had elections. And so then we worked with our council colleagues this fall, well, actually from August through October, to do the empowerment tours and do extensive engagement. In addition, the neighborhood liaisons have been presenting this at area commission meetings and even having one-on-one coffees with area commissioners and folks that really wanted a deeper dive and had additional questions.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's just really important to illustrate that the department, but also this council, is listening. We don't want to just create policy or make changes just to make them, but to answer an issue that is present. And so just thank you for your engagement. Thank you again for your leadership, and look forward to hearing a little testimony. I have to step out shortly, but wanted to hear.
Thank you, Council President Harden. Councilmember Remy, do you have any questions for the department?
No, not really any questions. Thank you again for the work that the department's done, Chair Dorans, for all the work that you've done. I just want to echo a little bit of what the council president said. You know, from somebody that came from the places that you're sitting in as president of the Northland Community Council, one of the things that struck me in coming into this role was the variances, excuse the pun, between different zoning that was done on an area commission basis. So not everybody was consistent. And as one of the most important things that you all do for us here on the council, review those initial variances that come through, for zoning purposes. And so when I realized that it wasn't consistent across the board, I thought we did it pretty well up at Northland. And I know there's many of you in this room that do it really well, but there's some that barely can get people together to do that. And so, consistency across the board is important so that we know that when we're sitting here and we're hearing these cases, we can trust that it's been embedded through a process throughout the entire city equally, so that there isn't preferential treatment because they went through an area in one part of town that didn't have anybody that did zoning on the local level. So this is a very important work for us here on council, and I appreciate all the time and commitment that each and every one of you put into this role. I know it's because of the passion that you have for your community and your neighborhood. And it's incredibly important and something that we feel we never take for granted. So thank you for coming down tonight. Interested to hear any thoughts, concerns that you may have in regards to this, or the support that you have for it. We certainly, again, want to make sure that you feel that you've had every opportunity to voice your concerns and to also voice your approval of this type of legislation. So that's all I have. Thank you, Chair Dorans.
Thank you, Council President Harden. Thank you, Councilmember Remy. I think to underscore what they've said, you know, in my short time on council, I've had the pleasure of being at almost every single area commission around the city, and you all serve as a vital voice for your neighborhoods, for your community. I don't think we could, I always make the joke, there's 7 of us and there's 890,000 people in the entire city of Columbus. It's difficult for us to know what's happening in every nook and cranny in the city, and the very fact that we do know a lot what's going on has to do with all the folks that are sitting out here in this chamber this evening. And I think I probably speak for my council colleagues. It's amazing to see the amount of folks who are here this evening who are engaged on this. When we have, I had a public hearing last week on something, and I didn't have a single person show up. So I appreciate the folks taking the time out of their evening to be here tonight to share your thoughts. We're going to turn to the public testimony portion of the hearing. I have, let's see how many. We have 17 speaker slips in total. So I will be calling folks up, asking for comments to be limited to 3 minutes so I can get you all home to your families and dinner at some point. If you do have a question or a comment that potentially could be answered directly by the department, I may turn it to them if it's appropriate. We may need to do some follow-up with the speaker afterwards. If so, we'll try and make a note of that and get back a hold of you. But if able, we'll try and get any questions or clarifying comments made this evening. So with that, I'd like to ask the first individual for public testimony this evening is Ms. Tiffany White. Commissioner White, thank you for coming back to council. Good evening. Nah, go.
I'm actually here this evening as an area commissioner. So we were sort of given notice of the comment towards not only knowing that it had to do with 319 initially. That was a little concerning to me with regards to, are you, uh-oh. Can you hear me? No. I need to talk loud.
We need to talk loud, we can't hear you.
So that was a little
Can we-
concerning to me.
Can you restart this timer? Yeah, we don't want, yeah. There we go.
With regards to 3109, because it was called an empowerment tour, which for a longtime commissioner, that could be empowering individuals to join the commission. It could have a lot of different variations, but until I received a call from City Council to say, hey, are you going to come to this? It has to do with 3109. I would not have been able to participate in that. So I think the participation numbers may have been good, but they could have been better if we would have just called it for what it was. I don't have a problem with the numbers. I don't think you should take commissioners away from a commission that has that 21 number. To limit commissioners to a 6-year term for best practices with a succession plan. Succession plans are awesome when you have committed citizens in your community. It's hard to keep commissioners because we're volunteers, we're unpaid, and other people have other agendas. So they may be around for a year, maybe 6 months, and then you have us long timers. So I don't think we should limit terms. We model council. Council doesn't have term limits. Our committees model council. As far as zoning, yes, everyone does it different, but I think all of us do it well. Bylaws, our bylaws, specifically North Central's bylaws, were written in concert with City Attorney Janet Jackson. And many of the commissions coming behind us used our bylaws as a template. So when we talk about best practices, we need to look at everyone's bylaws and decide what is the best practice in dealing with those bylaws. My concern is just the transparency. I've had personally commissioners or folks come up and say they want to join the commission and never show up again. So succession plans are great, but are you going to have those individuals? And then to remove leadership after.
We've got to back up.
Don't start me over.
No.
But to have a succession plan and then have leaders who have served their 6 years in leadership roles as far as chair, vice chair, and then they have to sit out for 3 years, you could be losing a lot of talent. And I say that because you have new commissioners who aren't able to go to zoning meetings or attend those hearings because of their work schedule. So we need to be very conscious of this is a volunteer role, and in doing this role, we have to be flexible. Also mandating volunteers to go to training, that's a bit much as well. City Attorney Pfeiffer said you cannot mandate, so how can I tell a commissioner who's volunteering within your first year of becoming a commissioner, you need to attend at least this many trainings? We could do training sessions online where you can get credit for those. I mean, we need to think outside the box. Many organizations do this. Same thing with cultural competency. I do mine online. So, I mean, we need to think of those type of things if we're going to say that we need to have trainings and that these individuals have to take them. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner White. I wonder if the department could speak to the piece of Commissioner White's comments about offering the trainings in a new way that's not just coming down the Jeffrey Hammond building, that makes it a little more accessible to folks potentially?
Absolutely, and I think I mentioned that in my opening comments as well, that one of the things we would be looking at, in addition to building the websites, is to looking at other ways to have the training. So either having them online, having them videotaped, having a YouTube channel or something where you could look at them. I understand we can't mandate people to training, but I think it would also be very difficult to do your job if you don't understand the zoning rules and the guidelines as things change. So that's why we want to be able to offer them, and then as well as offer all those other different ways to access the training.
Thank you.
Director, do you have any idea of those, one of the points that Chair White mentioned was the ones that are over 17, do you have any idea how many times they don't hit quorum? Because that would be my main concern. I really don't care if they've got 30. If they're hitting quorum, it doesn't matter from my perspective.
According to our records, of the 3 that are over 20, one currently has 19 seats filled, one currently has 18 seats filled, and one currently has 12 seats filled.
Anything else? Thank you. Next speaker to come before council is Mr. Nathaniel Wilkins. Mr. Wilkins, welcome back to council.
(1612) Arlington Avenue, Mr. Nathaniel George Wilkins, as a resident. I don't know too much about the code changes, but one thing I would like to say, I'd like to see the term to be shortened up instead of 6 years, maybe 2 years, and maybe given the more ideas for these code changes. But like I said, I'm all in for these code changes, which I'm about ready to do, but I'd like to hear more clarification on this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkins. Director, could you just clarify the term issues that are currently being proposed in the code changes tonight?
In the code change, only proposing that commissioner terms are standardized to 3 years. The 6-year language, that's just in the best practices, and that's for leadership.
Thank you. The next speaker to come before council is Commissioner Ash from South Linden.
Good evening, all.
Good evening.
And you can pronounce my name Ashe.
Ashe, I apologize.
Thank you. I want to, first of all, say thank you to the mayor's office, to city council members, and also to the Department of Neighborhoods for my appointment as commissioner. I am a newly appointed commissioner, so please bear with me. South Linden Area Commission has worked with the Department of Neighborhoods and community leaders to establish partnerships, and we accept the new creation of new ones. However, the residents of South Linden also have community plans of our own. We have shared plans with various departments with the city, and to date, none of our programs have been adopted. But we will continue to share with the understanding that the plans will be inevitably included into the partnership. Our efforts are to build and preserve the Linden community based on the issues of residential needs, business services, and community activities. We are striving to be a community where everyone can prosper. We will use the tools, excuse me, we will use the tools made available to empower our residents as we, the Area Commission, are the last line of defense in response to the needs of our community. We can focus on strengthening our current partnerships in the following areas, in two areas that I am proposing. One is communications. We had our liaison come to our last commission meeting and announce changes to Section 3109 with talking points on how commissioners are to behave and how the Department of Neighborhoods will become overseers of the city commissions. We were told that other details were to be emailed to us. And up until this point, I had not received that. We were given a packet a few minutes ago, I believe, was maybe the information that we're to get. Have not been able to read it all as of yet. I also have not received any other information about certain events that are going on in my community, like litter and things of that nature, and other events that I just did not get a notice on. Concerned Linden Clergy. South Linden Area Commission also has a resident survey that was taken during our Jazz in the Park series. And I brought several of them with me. I think that we need to take this into consideration, that we are conducting our own surveys, and we would like that looked into to be able to implement what our residents want and need. My second area of concern is Section 3109, the amendments that are being put forth in Section 2, 3109.09 under terms. The first sentence reads, "Members of an area commission shall serve without compensation." I propose that it should read, "Members of an area commission shall serve with compensation." And the fiscal impact to be that area commissioners will receive a compensation in the form of a monthly stipend for general services rendered. Point, area commissioners work hard. Yes, we love our communities. Yes, we volunteer. But we contribute our time, our money, our energy to our communities. We attend meetings, conferences, and we plan and execute elaborate community events. Area commissioners also have to campaign to be elected. These are all of the things that everyone who works for the city get paid for. And my last point, if we are to have overseers and we are uncompensated workers, that's not a good look, and it doesn't feel good. I'm new at this, but it feels like slavery. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. One point of clarification I wanted to make, in case other folks have this question as well. So the code changes should have been sent out to all the area commissioners from my office. The best practices guide, which is optional for area commissions to adopt. Again, the department is going to be working with folks to look at adopting those recommendations. We did not provide those in the communications from my office. They've been provided here this evening, but again, those are not mandatory for folks, and that bylaws template is not what's coming before City Council next Monday to be voted on. There's still ample opportunity to work with the department to make suggestions to what that template should look like moving into the future. But again, for purposes of this hearing, we're primarily focusing on the code changes that will be come before council next Monday. Director?
Yeah, Councilmember Dorans, I also wanted to just address the point. It was always our intent to send out to email the information after the hearing in the event that there were things that were going to be changed and there wouldn't be different versions of the document around. So Commissioner O'Shea, that information will be shared with the area commissions as the liaisons shared with you at your meeting.
Thank you, Director. Next speaker to come before council is Mr. John Malachi. Mr. Malachi, welcome to council. You have 3 minutes, and if you could share what, if any, organization you're representing this evening.
Good evening. John Malachi, Executive Director of the Building Industry Association of Central Ohio, representing the home building community here in our city. Mr. Chairman, Councilman Remy, thank you very much. On behalf of the BIA, we want to thank City Council for bringing this issue before us tonight. We believe that it is a step in the right direction. However, we do consider it only to be a small first step. One of the challenges that we have, as Councilman Remy identified earlier in the city, is a variance and difference in process. And when we have changes in process across different area commissions, it oftentimes adds to delays, whether that delay comes from not having a quorum or from different processes. It could be as simple as examples that we've heard of members of ours being asked to leave a room during a vote and seeing inconsistent reports coming from the area commissions to City Council. These delays often add to cost. What once took our members in this city 9 months to 6 months to 9 months to get approval on now takes over 2 years. That carrying cost adds cost to building homes at a time when we face a housing crisis here in our city. So again, we do appreciate this effort. We would like to see more consistent processes throughout the area commission. Additionally, we are fully supportive of providing the area commission members with additional resources by way of training, staff, and funding so that they can accomplish the mission that is set forth by this council. And we think it's very important that the Department of Neighborhoods receives the funding that they need so that they might be able to provide adequate personnel in order to serve these commission members who are volunteering their time to serve their neighborhoods in our city. With that, I yield. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Malachi. Department, do you have any comments to make? Thanks. The next speaker to come before council is our second Commissioner O'Shea from the South Linden Area Commission. think we are going to limit speakers to 1 3-minute comments at this time. So we're going to move on then to Ms. Maudie Grace. Thank you, Ms. Grace. Welcome back to council.
Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have here, my concern is with the leadership based on titles rather than the whole commission being included, because I have yet to get passed down information that was taught at one of the sessions. And one of my issues is that everything is done on Saturdays. Saturdays, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, so that's my church day. And no one has tried to address this issue. My other main issue is seniors. As she said about technology, a lot of the seniors are not tech savvy. A lot of them do not have internet. So how are the people within the neighborhoods going to get all of this information that's being sent out over the internet? And until we fix that, we're going to always have shortages of people volunteering to be commissioners or anything else, because I've had people come to me and say, well, I didn't know about the election packages. I didn't do this and I didn't do that. They weren't from my area, but they still came to me about it. And we need a better way of putting out this information to people and making sure that they understand about what they're trying to put in for or whatever they're trying to do as far as the commission, the civics, or whatever. Because we have 10 civics and we have 15 seats of 15 commissioners. And 4 of those commissions are appointed. And on this paper, I was thoroughly confused because I was asking you on the title text file sheet, it says about the area commissions appoint. And see, we have appointed commissioners, but we also have commissioners that run for their seats. So I'm confused on that base, and that was one of the issues I came to you about. The other issue is that we can change all the rules we want to, but unless they are enforced, it's just more writing on paper.
Thank you, Ms. Grace. The department would like to clarify the appointment issue, or would you like to follow up with Ms. Grace afterwards?
We're happy to follow up with her afterwards.
Okay.
I do want to just share that Ms. Motti, we've talked to her about the training and the trainings that are offered during the week, the new zoning training. So as we set the 2020 schedule, we are looking to address that. I think when we talked to her last year, we had already had a contract with a consultant, and those dates were set. And so we're trying to adjust that, as well as looking at the other platforms for training.
And Director, would you mind just sort of expanding upon that a little bit? From my vantage point, it seems like the department's moving in the direction of, one, offering a diverse set of trainings, offering a more diverse way for folks to receive the trainings, and timing, a more standardized timing of these things, to, again, hopefully better meet folks where they're at schedule-wise and that kind of thing. Could you just speak to a little bit more about the department's efforts to do so? Because that's one of the things that I know I've heard from commissioners quite a bit over the year is wanting to have that sooner so they can plan their lives around it and make sure that they get those kind of things. If you wouldn't mind just addressing that.
The training schedule? Absolutely. So, as I said, once we included the funding for training in our 2020 budget, and so we had to wait to go through the process. We couldn't set a training schedule until we knew that we would have the funds to work with contractor to conduct the training. So once we've done that, and then we've been in this process, our team is working. So it is our goal to have that training schedule by the end of this year, so you would have the full year's trainings available to you either by the end of December, first part of January, and then you could set your schedule accordingly.
And that's, moving forward, that's what the department's intention is to do every year to, hey, this is the timing that folks should expect to know what the schedule looks like and that kind of thing?
Absolutely,
Great.
absolutely.
Thanks, Director. Next speaker to come before council is Commissioner B.J. White. Welcome back.
Good afternoon, members of council, Councilmember Remy, Councilmember Dorans, and Department of Neighborhoods. I'm honored to speak to you today regarding the proposed changes to Section 3109 of the Columbus City Code, outlining the work of the city's area commissions. Regarding item 1, to standardize the area commission terms to 3 years. As a word of affirmation, the CAC, the Clintonville Area Commission, commissioner terms per the CAC bylaws are already 3-year terms. Every year, 1/3 of the commission seats are up for election. A 3-year term allows a suitable time frame for building relationships and for gaining experience as a commissioner to learn the ropes, so to speak. A prospective commissioner should plan to represent a district for 2 terms, or 6 years. I believe that this level of commitment is needed in order to build and sustain those relationships with one's constituents, with area business leaders, and with city council. Of course, plans change or conflicts materialize, so not seeking re-election after the first term is certainly okay. I believe that the 3-year term is a good balance between the need for a commitment, but does not become an extended time burden. Regarding item 2, capping the number of area commissioners to 17 per commission to help ensure quorums can be met. Our Clintonville Area Commission has 9 commission districts, 1 commissioner for each district, which limits each commissioner to representing approximately 2,000 to 3,000 households. Because of this, a commissioner can easily canvass his or her constituents efficiently. Residents of each district have an opportunity to communicate directly with his or her commissioner because of this. Also, each district represents 1 general geographic area, so many of our districts residents experience common issues or have common concerns within that district. While I cannot comment specifically on capping the number of commissioners, the way that the Clintonville Area Commission is currently apportioned works well. Regarding item 3, specify that it is the role of the Department of Neighborhoods to work with area commissions. Speaking for myself as chair of the Clintonville Area Commission, our neighborhood liaison, Catherine Call, has been a great source of information, and she represents a conduit with the city on several issues. Catherine regularly attends CAC meetings, taking questions from residents and commissioners, and helps to clarify city policies during these meetings. Catherine has consulted with the CAC regarding city processes, has assisted with mediation between residents when necessary, and has most recently established office hours at the Whetstone Library for optimal community outreach. It only makes sense that this role can be clarified as needed to accurately represent the roles and responsibility of the Department of Neighborhoods to work with the area commissions. I'm grateful and honored to be at City Council's avail. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next we have this evening, Ms. Libby Weatherholtz. Ms. Weather, welcome back to council.
Thank you. All right.
And go Bucks.
Yeah.
I should have started with that.
Red, it's Christmas, really.
It's a good week.
Councilmember Dorans, Councilmember Ramey, and the Department of Neighborhoods. My name is Libby Weatherholt, and I'm in the 7th year of serving as a commissioner on the Clintonville Area Commission, 3 of which were spent as chair. I would like to commend the Department of Neighborhoods on their role in developing this legislation. When the department was formed, its leaders spent time listening to the various commissions and their needs. As they listened, they realized what many of us who have served on commissions know, that each commission and area of town have developed under different conditions and needs. Some, such as Clintonville, have been part of the city and well-developed for over a century. Some others remained more rural well into the 20th century and are dealing with growing pains quite unlike anything other parts of towns have endured. The department has demonstrated a great respect for the commissioners who are leaders in their neighborhood, personally invested and more aware of the many problems their area needs to solve. In good faith, the department developed a large number of changes to add to City Code 3109. Some of the changes were made to create uniformity among the commissions, and some were created to help the department more easily track all of the different commissions. After proposing these numerous changes, again, the department listened and listened and listened. Each commission's thoughts on all of the changes varied wildly, again, due to varying experiences in each neighborhood. The code changes that eventually have been proposed are in response to the input that the commissions have given the department. They will help the department by having some uniform deadlines and terms of office among the commissions, and the changes also respect each commission's autonomy in respect to their governance, but prevent any commission from becoming too unwieldy. I applaud the website effort that is being proposed. I've been after the council to do this for several years. I think that having something a little more basic and uniform will be very helpful for all the commissions. I also believe the best practices template will prove to be very helpful to all commissions in the city. I applaud the Department of Neighborhoods process on these changes. I am sure that the staff in the department would like to have included many more of their proposed changes, but they have respected the opinions of the commissions and shown a great respect for the needs and opinions of each neighborhood.
Thank you, Commissioner. Director, I want to know if you could speak to this a little bit. So you mentioned, I think in your presentation and follow-up, a little bit of the process that the department has utilized to get to where we are today. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to, if you could just share a little bit, building on the Commissioner's comments about where the department started and where it ended up, and sort of why, mm-hmm. and how we got here. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Again, when we first became a department, one of the things we did was go out and talk to area commissioners, and it was just that we were hearing they wanted some standardization across area commissions. After that, we engaged a consultant to work with the area commissions and survey all of the area commissioners. And again, the same theme kept kind of rising to the top. As we reached out, and this probably started, in maybe mid-17, the end of 2017, beginning of 2018. And so, as Commissioner Weatherholt said, we really took into consideration that during the time we started and as we would go through this process, there were also changes on the area commissions. And again, we wanted to make sure that each voice was heard. So to get us to this point, when we proposed kind of this laundry list of code changes, we also got guidance from the city attorney's office, again, to not include so much into the code, but to look at this administrative rule or another process. That's something that we're not able to do at this point, but we may look at further. So when we started, we took all of that information that we took, and at the guidance of the city attorney's office, determine what made sense to be in the actual code as a code change, and then what made sense to be as a separate document.
Thank you, Director. Next we have this evening Commissioner James Rayburn. Welcome to Council, Commissioner.
Members of City Council, staff, and the public, good evening. My name is James Rayburn, Vice Chair of 5th by Northwest Area Commission. I'd like to express my support for all the changes that are before you for the proposed changes in 3109. Going back to the number of caps versus minimum, I agree with Director William Scott. We are a bit of a struggle to fill some seats in our commission. So that is an area that continues to challenge us, but we will continue to push ahead and get people to volunteer. I want to express also gratitude for all the support that council has given to our area of town. We are under a lot of development pressure, so we appreciate any tools that you can provide, whether it be land use regulations. I know we review rezonings and variances, but it would be nice if we can have more of a say given the development pressures on how we want our area to develop. But again, want to be appreciative, and hopefully in the next step you can look at other changes that will help us with standardizing and being consistent with land use regulations. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate you coming down. Next we have Commissioner Dorian Uhauser from the University Area Commission. Thank you for coming down to council.
Thank you.
I feel like as the university area representatives, we should, especially it's a good week for University District.
Well, we left town during the last game, that's for sure. I brought with me David Hagley in case there is a question that might be best addressed by him. Follow up if you don't mind. I want to thank you for making yet one more long evening for yourselves. I can imagine this is also a busy season for you. I'm going to try to stay to my script to stay within time period here. We've come to you tonight to speak against the proposed ordinances affecting area commissions on behalf of the University Area Commission, which is the city's oldest commission, formed in 1971 and established in 1972. UAC's creation was the direct result of a comprehensive effort by the neighborhoods, institutions, businesses, and the city of Columbus to address the negative effects of the AR4 zoning that had come about because of the explosive growth of Ohio State in the 2 decades following World War II and the educational opportunities then afforded to GIs for expanding their own education, the GI Bill. The formation of the Area Commission and the 2 comprehensive and well-researched downzonings that happened over the years were actually the result of a wave of a battle between AR4 zoning, between the older civic group, the University Civic Association, Community Association, and developers. The peak of that tension was actually underscored when the UCA president, who was a professor of chemistry at Ohio State living on Indianola Avenue, had his car packed with dynamite by interests that were opposing downzoning. Subsequently, the University District Organization, a neighborhood professional planning board, which continues to exist, was funded by Ohio State University, Battelle, Chem Abstracts, and the organizations advocated and fought for the creation of an area commission, which would bring the diverse interests together to plan for the future. And it has been in the spirit of that in which the University Area Commission has existed for what is going on 48 years now, to play an important role in actually being able to solve problems and to work very closely with the Department of Development and other departments. The University Area Commission is represented by 20 individuals made up of 12 elected neighborhood residents from 4 districts, 6 founding and historic institutional partners, which bring us continuity in terms of approach and also institutional memory, and 2 constituency groups that represent social and religious groups and also tenant and apartment interests. And these help to illuminate many of those other voices that can sometimes become overlooked in the neighborhood. We are the most diversely populated neighborhood, and until we get the 2020 census, we can only estimate that our population is over 60,000. The University District is not all about OSU students and a small handful of homeowners. Rather, we are multi-generational and socially, economically, and ethnically a city within a city. Aggregate numbers do not tell the story of the diversity. Traditional and non-traditional families, homeless who live under the Summit Street Bridge, students who live in their cars, and 7,000 students who need food assistance from the local pantries. The invisible population of teenagers who blend in with college students, group homes, renters, many of whom are single and are often aging pensioners, and or Appalachian families who have lived in the neighborhood for as well as 30 years in the same house, always renting. Immigrant and migrant groups who are residential but do not fall into the foreign student population of OSU. Currently, in fact, we're doing our part to expand our population, having now 5 brand new babies born to the area commission members in the last year. Who said we're aging? We're not. A 17-member commission limit imposed by the proposed ordinance would upset the balance of the diversity of these voices we seek and that we expect to hear from. And we review our bylaws regularly, and they are always reviewed by city attorney, and we are not troubled by a lack of quorum. Limiting a board to 17 is in fact counterintuitive. Quorum is established by bylaws. Rather than limit a maximum number, each commission should be allowed to set the number of commissions and their quorum for what they see are their needs. It would be more logical to limit the minimum number of commissioners so as to make sure that the numbers never fall so far below that it allows for reasonable input and discussion on the most important of all community levels, that of the actual population of the people who live there. Conformity of procedures across diverse neighborhoods neither promotes equality nor equity. The proposal to have all commissions start on January 1st seems reasonable, but revealed that the caveat that says that they have to have their elections before September does not make sense. Our bylaws were changed when Ohio State moved to a semester basis so that we could make sure that students had access to run for elections, be appointed by either undergraduate student government or Council of Graduate Affairs, which are 2 of our categories for appointed seats, or vote in the commissioner election in general. They live among us, they live with us. We are very much a mixed neighborhood. We would have to move our voting back to the end of April in order to have students there at full maximum to be able to vote. And what would they be voting for? A seat that would not be occupied until January of the following year. Does not make sense. This seems to us to serve the convenience of the Department of Neighborhoods, not the actual neighborhood. I'm addressing these proposed code changes, but in truth, we will be also sending you a timetable for the issues that arose December of 2018 and how they went dormant January and February of 2019, how they resurfaced on November 19th on 2019 with a phone call in which the changes were read to me over the phone, and we asked for them by email written, were promised them, and they did not appear. And they did not appear even after the Department of Neighborhoods appeared at the following night at our area commission meeting, and we never saw them in writing until they arrived on Friday, and the Friday before the first reading, and they arrived because Councilman Dorans actually sent the letter. The process for us has not been transparent, and the University Area Commission will be requesting information pursuant to the Ohio Records Law. We actually urge that Council consider tabling these proposed changes and continue to work on behalf of all area commissions and the importance of meaningful issues. And one thing I would just like to add very quickly, the gentleman who spoke about representing housing and development, I couldn't agree more. I think area commissions need to be able to respond quickly and efficiently in every which way they can to help developers make good determinations about what's being built. But that seems to be more inhibiting because of the lack of communication between the Department of Neighborhoods and the Department of Development. Empowering liaisons, and I think the liaisons are the strongest, best link. We have the same liaison as Clintonville does, and she is excellent. And from the others I've talked to, they feel very strongly. But empowering the liaisons with important development information, Department of Development would help immensely in keeping that process on track. So if you have a question, refer to Mr. Hager. I don't know who that is, by the way. Most of our team is at a zoning committee tonight, so they couldn't be here.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your comments. I want to give the department an opportunity to respond, or would you like to follow up afterwards?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure to which part, because there was a lot there. But one of the things that I will share is that, yes, we started down this path earlier this year. And again, as I mentioned in my overview, with changes that were taking place, new council members that were coming on board, and to trying to level set. And so if there was a lack of communication to the area commissioners for that, I will take that responsibility. But we were asked to kind of wait and bring everybody along. And so that is probably where that communication broke down.
Yeah, Councilmember Remy?
I'd like to ask the department, what, on the one point that stuck out to me was the September 30th, that requirement. Can you explain the rationale behind that? I mean, you know, we hold elections the first Tuesday of November, and then the office holders take their office in January typically. So curious why the September 30th deadline.
Thank you for the question. What this whole, and again, that part of is in the best practices, and that's something that's optional for folks to follow or not. So I think we're getting caught up in that a little bit. But the rationale behind we've had problems with commissions in the past of voting at times when they haven't been officially appointed. The September 30th deadline gives us enough time it gives us October, November, and December to make sure all the appointment forms are processed by the mayor's office and council, so that we're sure when they start their new commission year suggested commission year in January, that they are properly appointed and we don't have those kinds of problems in the future.
Could you also expand upon that, Mr. Huey? Just as you know, one of the things that I think I've talked with the department about, and I've certainly talked to some of the air commissioners about this, is that some folks' elections are built around an event. The famous example, the bean dinner for the Hilltop. One of the things that we talked about is making sure that there's some built-in flexibility for folks. I think Ms. Doreen's talking about their specific timing for them with regard to the students being there. What kind of flexibility potentially, can exist for that. I don't know if there is any based upon what's being proposed at this point, but want to, I know we've had conversations about the interest of making sure that there's flexibility for folks to be able to have elections that make sense for their specific area. And I think Ms. Doreen talked specifically about issues that they have because of the student population they want to make sure is engaged. I just wanted to give the department an opportunity to speak to that.
Just a couple things. I know Ms. Uhouse also indicated that they have 12 seats that are elected, and then they have seats that are appointed. The appointed commissioners, if they're not done by September 30th, if you're bringing the students in, but if you have the elections done so that we can get the paperwork processed, I think that was the breakdown I heard. There were 12 elected, 6 at large, and then two constituent voices, which brings them to a total of 18.
Sorry. Yeah, I'd ask the department to follow up with her about this issue, because as to her point, I think it's a very valid one to make sure that a student population that I think Columbus likes to hold ourselves up as the ability to make sure that folks of all different walks of life are engaged in these organizations. I think it's a very unique one, one that I think we need to take seriously as we look at this legislation. So I'd like to make sure the department follows up with the University Area Commission to, before we have an opportunity to move forward.
Absolutely, and I stand corrected on my math. It brings them to a total of 20 area commissioners, but they currently, according to our records, have 18 seats filled.
Next speaker to come before council is Mr. Jim Griffin. Welcome back to council.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this public hearing, Councilmember Dorans and Remy, and thank you to the Department of Neighborhood Services for all the work that you put into this, especially the best practices. In my initial, I have been part of this, I'm Jim Griffin, the chair of the Columbus Southside Area Commission, and I've been involved with this commission for 13 years. I started on the task force, which was a 2-year process that created both the Columbus Southside Area Commission and the Far Southside Area Commission. I have served on the commission for 11 years, and for the last 9 years, I have served as chair of that commission. Reviewing the changes, the proposed changes to 3109, I find those changes to be reasonable. I personally don't have any issues with that, and I'm very happy to hear that these best practices are optional. We don't have to necessarily approve them all. I would like to note that most of these best practices the Columbus Southside Area Commission is already doing, and it has been already expressed once. My only concern really is Article 4, officers, where you're going to be limiting the terms of the chair to 6 years, and then it says basically after that term expires, then the individual, there's like a 3-year period where you can't run for office. And I know that's not what the council is going to be voting on, but and I've said this at a previous meeting that Department of Neighborhood Services had, I think that change or that best practice, I think it's arbitrary, I think it's unnecessary, I think it discourages people who want to assume a leadership role. The best way to term limit someone is to not vote for them. And I would have to also say, to reiterate, which was already spoken earlier by Commissioner White, I believe, if the mayor doesn't have term limits, if council doesn't have term limits, then why are you imposing term limits on commissioners who are unpaid and who put many, many, many hours into their jobs that they take very seriously? And again, I know that that's optional and it's part of the best practices and it's not what you'll be voting on, but I just wanted to share my opinion on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Griffin. The department like to follow up about it? Next speaker to come before council is Commissioner Quay Barnes. Welcome back to council. And I apologize for folks, you may be hearing the heat turning on and making a lot of noise in this old building, so hopefully that's not too distracting for folks.
It is. Hello, Councilman Dorans and Remy, Department of Neighborhoods, and I'd like to acknowledge all of my commissioner friends. Thank you very much. I am Quay Barnes, and I'm the interim chair of the Mideast Area Commission, or MAC. We are the new kids on the block, and therefore our commission bylaws are constructed under the new proposed format. We appreciate that the number of commissioners are being opened to 17. We are a commission that is structured from the bottom up. All of our concerns and comments come from our neighborhoods that we represent. And with 14 active civic associations, each of whom elect their own commissioner, the 17 positions will allow us to include 3 additional members such as youth, businesses, schools, churches, or whatever. In terms of reporting to the Department of Neighborhoods, we've only been working with the Department of Neighborhoods throughout this process in establishing our commission. We have appreciated their help, especially with our liaison, Lynn LaCour, and their continued direction as they solidify our organization. And we thank them for providing training to help in our transition from a 14-year established community collaborative to a commission. We agree that the commission term should be limited to 3 years. In our case, as stated before, each civic under the MAC elects its own commissioner in the way that they see best. Some are appointed, Others use the nomination and election process. This allows, blessedly, for a rather large pool of potential leaders. A 3-year rotation allows for new people with new ideas and methods, which, for us, even when we were a collaborative, helps us to maintain a strong level of commitment and a large level of excitement. Personally, I look back and see many times in my community leadership life where someone trained and mentored me and then stepped aside and let me lead. That is the method I continue to use today. The MAC seeks out talented and innovative people to train and mentor. We have several leaders that I serve with currently that could take my position today and perform it admirably. And within 3 years, I hope to give them that chance. Thank you.
Chair Barnes.
Chair Barnes. I think Councilmember Remy has got a question for you, if that's all right.
Thank you, Chair Dorans. I should have asked your permissions first. I'm curious, since you were similarly structured as the Northland Community Council is, it's quite possible that you could have more than 14 neighborhoods involved with your area commission. Isn't that correct?
We have only 15 neighborhoods in our commission.
I mean, Northland had 25.
They had
so
25, yeah.
What I'm getting at is the 17 limit would preclude Northland. They'd either have to break up or would have to have, if they were to become an area commission, they'd have to, decide who was deserved of a spot and who wasn't. So I just wanted to make sure that you weren't in that same position, because the way that you were structured is very similar to how Northland operates.
At one point, we were considering combining neighborhoods. Some of the smaller civics would share a commissioner, and that could still be an option for us.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair Barnes. And I also just want to again, recognize the MAC for forming this past year. It's certainly been a long process, and and just want to, again, compliment your leadership to bringing that to fruition this past year, and to become our 21st area commission in the city. So, and thank you for setting the example for, again, the folks who come next too. Thanks. Next speaker to come before council is Commissioner Curtis Davis. Welcome back to council, Mr. Davis.
Good evening, Councilman Dorans and Remy. I'm fully in support of this. We need to do some type of structure or standardization when it comes to area commissions. A lot of has been said on the structure and the recommendations and stuff. The thing that I would like to highlight going forward after we get this passed is to really work on the zoning process of standardization. The gentleman from the BIA made a good point that you go from one commission, they do one thing, and another commission does something differently. Some folks, I've seen commissions hold folks hostage for 2 and 3 and 4 months. That isn't productive. So that's something that we need to keep and stop kicking the can down the road. We need to, once this is passed, engage the Department of Development and Director Messer and those folks over there to put a policy in place that should be resemblance of what council and what the BZA looks as a recommendation in a way you guys, when they come to council with, the process and stuff. But that is definitely something that we need to focus on. The Department of Neighborhoods have done a great job of engaging. Anytime that I've called over there and engaged, and I think she's tired of hearing me, beat the drum of getting this done and keeping things moving. But some standardization, obviously, a lot of the stuff is optional for commissions, so it's not something that is set in dead weight of each commission doing it. But one of the biggest tasks that the commissions have is zoning, and we need to focus on that and get that standardized. So when a developer or a neighbor or resident comes and they move from one part of the area to another part of the city, a garage demo should be the same process in, the south side that it is in Northland, or, a BZA application should be the same process through and in the same time frame, give or take, maybe a week or two, depending on schedules and stuff like that. But I think once we do that, I think that the city can grow even more. And also the educational part. I know that Carla and her folks are working on different types of things. I think if folks really took the time to do these videos and explain to people how the Department of Economic Development goes about tax abatements and different things and how those are done, and educate folks, not just let the hearsay go on, educate folks of how that is determined when it gets to either council or to the BZA. I think that a lot of things should be able to be resolved. You're not going to make everybody happy, but I think the more we educate the community and the folks of how the process works, I think that the city will continue to grow, and maybe we'll be the 13th largest city in the United States. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. I did want to make the comment based upon your testimony that I think there's significant interest for the Department of Council to make sure that this is an ongoing conversation, that we've got some specific code changes in front of us that I think are worthy of consideration of council. And I think to your point, when we talk about the folks in this room who serve in these bodies, we need to make sure that you're some of our best informed folks in our community about how, whether it's neighborhood development, things are going on in the city, to make sure that we're doing that work. Because if you're not well informed, there's no chance for anyone else to be well informed, because you're giving up your time, your effort to do this. And I know that's something that the department really wants to do as much as they can moving forward on this. And I know it's something from the council perspective, from our neighborhood engagement team, that we want to make sure that we're doing moving forward as well, to make sure the folks in this room are the best engaged people in our community. So appreciate the comments. Next speaker to come before council is Chair Kathleen Bailey. Thank you for being here this evening.
Okay, you want comments, so that's what you're going to get.
Absolutely.
All right, they say that, what is it, the best damn band in the land, OSU, well, we're the best commission. That is because in 1979, some people, I can remember Alice Flowers, put together a very tight organization, and because of that, we have lasted for 40 years. I don't know what all this is about. I feel sorry for those who feel they can't operate and they need all this help. We are just people who are determined to get the job done. And this, first of all, we only have 17 members, and second of all, we've only had 3 terms since this place got started. I am more concerned with the part about the Department of Neighborhoods having oversight. What does that mean? There was an issue with the commission. They were told some things. I won't go into the details about it. But not one time was I ever contacted. Not one time was the vice chair contacted. I had to learn about this from one of the people who had a zoning application. I was angry to the point I was ready to cry, and I still am angry about it. So I hear all this stuff about the commissions need help with this, the commissions need help with that. I'm all for training. The more you can learn, the better. But I think we also need to look at how you're going to give them oversight when you vote on this. How are they going to operate with us? What's the oversight that they're going to have? I noticed for, as he said, the people having succession leading as chairs and vice chairs and secretaries. Now, we have it in our bylaws that we have a term limit, but if they want to override that, it's 2/3. Now, I see now that the Department of Neighborhoods has bumped it up to 3/4. And I don't appreciate that. I don't know why they did that, but I think they need to spend more time. They're a new department, and you, Councilman Doran, as over that committee, I feel this is a wonderful opportunity for you to help shape the department. But all I know is I was never contacted. Again, I'm still upset about it. So all this business about more classes, and we're not one size fits all. If you have a child in a class that's having problems, you don't hold the whole class back. You help that child, you give them additional help. If there are commissions, I've been in the classes, I've heard commissioners say, we're new to this, we really don't understand. Those are the people you work hard with. But one of the biggest mistakes you'll make is to do anything that's going to hold back those commissions that are already working just fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Wanted to give the department the ability to respond. And specifically, I would like a response to the clarifying in the code the oversight or the reference to the Department of Neighborhoods being the body of the city for area commissions to interact with.
Thank you, Councilmember Dorans. All that language does is clean up the code. Before the department was created, area commissions fell under the Department of Development, who had oversight over the area commissions. So if the issue is with the word oversight, it's not anything that we're taking on that's different. It was just a piece of the code that was not cleaned up when the department was created. And so all that does is change it from Department of Development to Department of Neighborhoods. It doesn't change how we've been operating. It doesn't change how we interact with council or with the area commissions.
And again, just to clarify, and I think you've explained it well, but so the relationship that the area commissions have with Department of Neighborhoods, as it's constituted today, you don't foresee any change in the way that relationship has been based upon that portion of the code proposals?
No, all it is, we've been operating like that. All that part of the code does is change Department of Development to Department of Neighborhoods, because the neighborhood liaisons and the area commission funding and all that was under the Neighborhood Services Division in the Department of Development, which went away when the Department of Neighborhoods was created.
Right. Thank you, Director. Next speaker to come before council is Commissioner Dana Macer. Welcome back to council.
Dana Masner with the Near East Area Commission. Good evening, all commissioners and city council. And as my chair, Kathleen Bailey, made very clear, the 40 years that we've been a commission, we've been a very successful commission because we have people that are very committed, and when we have turnover, we've had people who've been able to step up and assume those roles. So when you put some type of controls on the election process for chair and vice chair, you put a block on a system that has been very successful for us. And one thing we want to keep in mind is the developers coming to the commissions have the advantage. We are the people. We are all pro bono. Not all of us come from architecture, legal, or engineering experiences or financial. So these people are coming with all guns blasting through all areas of the city, particularly in the Near East Side, and our residents, our constituents, look upon us as being the first defense. We're not the last defense, we're the first defense. We are the ones, if we're mobilized, which we are on the Near East. When people come with a project in our commission, it has to be tight. It has to make financial sense, it has to make architectural sense, and it has to be good for our community. If our community doesn't get some benefit out of it, we will contest it, we challenge it, we grill them, we make them go back, reconsider. And our civics are very involved in that. That's very important. We may be an advisory body, but we still feel like we have the input. We're the feet on the ground. We're the canary in the coal mine. Numerous commissions, including the Near East Area Commission, have been run over. There have been times when we've said no to a project. Almost the whole body did. Council overrode us. I don't have to list the projects. We all know what they are. The developers have all the power. So the commissions, each commission should be able to set up within certain limits its criteria for what it does and how it does it. If it takes a little bit longer for the BIA or contractors, whatever, to deal with a particular commission, well, so be it. You're dealing with the people. You're on the ground. We are the people. When you come to the commission, it's almost a done deal. I mean, we all know the machinations that go on, all the money that's moved. I'm not saying anybody's doing anything funny, but things move fast when you get to council. It needs to move slow. The wheels need to turn slow in the neighborhood because the people in the neighborhood need to know what's going on. And we try our darndest to inform the neighborhood, and it's a challenge, but we feel like we do a good job. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. The next speaker to come before council is Ms. Becky Wilcott. Welcome back to council, Commissioner.
Thank you. Good evening, council members and Department of Neighborhoods.
Good
Good to
evening.
see everyone tonight. My name is Becky Walcott. I am the, Vice Chair, Zoning Chair, and I chair Public Safety for Far South Columbus.
Thank you.
Area Commission. I do want to state that I am not representing the Far South Columbus Area Commission at this time. I'm representing my own views as a commissioner. I would like to say that I am in favor of the pieces of legislation tonight with regards to 3109. What I'd also like to say is that listening to the speakers before me, it's obvious that we need a lot more clarity when it comes to working on 3109. I hope that's quite evident to everybody involved. The other comment I'd like to make with regards to standardization, and I do appreciate the gentleman representing the BIA, of which I am a member of as well. What I will tell you after 5 years of being a zoning chair, when changes are made and trainings are put into place, please train the applicants. I ask you to please not allow them to show up at our meetings unprepared or come in and cite a 12-year-old area plan or lie to us. And please be good neighbors. We are a scarred community of bad neighbors. Another thing I would like everyone to consider when we talk about each commission being different, we're far south. We're the grand entrance to the city of Columbus from the south. We're very proud of that. We have undeveloped land. We're not landlocked. So when I get 5 applications and everybody wants variances from setbacks, and we all want to build right up to the edge of the road or right down the throat of a farmer, know that we're not going to let that happen without a fight. So these are the things that each commission, I hope, is being considered in the challenges they face. My other comment is again, I just beg for more clarity. I speak to several commissioners throughout the city, and it's obvious that 3109 has confused every commissioner. So I do, look forward to more training. We've had several conversations about the aging of commissioners. Well, frankly, retired people and folks that are no longer working, in a facility or in an office struggle to work with the city because all of your meetings are at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We're at work. So that's why you get a lot of seniors on the commissions. They finally have the time to work with the city. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner, may I just ask a quick question, if that's okay? So you mentioned a couple different times about clarification and some confusion about 3109. Are you talking about in general, or are you talking about specifically the 3 code sections that we're looking at tonight?
No, actually, the 3 codes tonight have probably been the clearest.
Okay.
It's anything after that. You're hearing about terms with regards to chairs. And so we did just receive the best practices. I've not had a chance to read it. I've literally had it in my hand for about 20 minutes.
Yep.
So I think this will clear up some things.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. The last speaker we have to come before council this evening is Commissioner Deborah Diggs from the South Side.
Shirt and some shoes to go with it. How you doing, Director?
Good evening, Ms.
You can start
Diggs.
the clock, but I'm not going to pay attention
Oh, that's
to
okay.
it. Yeah, I know that's okay, because I'm me. Good evening, Councilman Remy, Councilman Doran. I'll talk to you Thursday. Couple things. One is that I wanted to come tonight because I didn't get a chance to come to the public utilities hearing comments. I wanted to make sure that my commissioners need to be talking to the people in their community about their water increases the first of the year. So that has nothing to do with area commissions. And as Commissioner Curtis Davis said, you guys are going to pass this. We already know it's a done deal, like a lot of things that come before council. I've only seen one thing stop in this room, and the gentleman back there from the business developers, we all know that you don't start doing all this stuff in 3 months, we're holding you up. That's a bunch of bullshit. Excuse me, I'm sorry, because developers in the city have plans. I can tell you August the 20th, 2024, I will officially retire because I'm making plans. So we know that they're making plans. So when they come to a group of residents who are volunteers, who are giving of their time, have had not coaching or training or any sort of mentoring, who just decided they're sick and tired of being sick and tired of being sick in their communities, they should be thankful, because they could have came, and they could have came, like Becky said, prepared. Stop trying to bamboozle us, because some of us in the room got a little bit of sense. Some of us ain't as smart as the others. Curtis has experience in zoning. Have him do a class. Have him teach. There's other people in this room and that are not here tonight that have that same. Yes, it's good to have it. She talking about clarity. I heard training, best practices, coaching, language wasn't consistent, pilot, 2021. So you've already projected when this is going to take place. Well, these are my points. Each community is different. So you may need 17 in one community. You may need 21 in another. University District, as the young lady back there said, I don't remember her name. I have a TBI, so sometimes I remember things. Sometimes I don't. University District is a little bit bigger than, say, a Driving Park, Livingston Avenue. Well, it's not Driving Park, it's Livingston now. Sometimes the city supports us and sometimes they don't. Like I said, sometimes we'll, in the community, say we don't want it in our community. We'll come to city council, and city council knows what's best for us to have in our community, even though they don't live there. I love our community. Yeah, most of us do it for the love. The development, I don't know if it was better under the Department of, if this was better under the Department of Neighborhoods, I don't know. I know Department of Development is how I got started doing it. When Mr. Puckett did a presentation at United Way through one of the trainings. Training, as Ms. Garland knows, has been very challenging because you can't make me do nothing. My mama couldn't make me do nothing, so y'all ain't gonna make me do nothing. And you're asking people to give her their time. They have families. Like Ms. Marty says, she's a Seventh-day Adventist. And Jim, you know I love you, but they have meetings on Saturdays. I'm not trying to get up and go to nowhere on Saturday morning to have a meeting with my community folks. Y'all can come to my house, we can sit down and have coffee and do it at the house, but that's not gonna happen either. I think for me the biggest thing is that when you make something and put something in place, all of you that sit around this, the day good thing right here, please remember, what did y'all say is how many thousand people in this city?
890,000.
And there's 7 of y'all trying to represent us. And there's, 21 commissions? And I know I've been a part of at least 3 or 4 of them being codified. Just remember, all those people are depending on each of you to make a decision that will hopefully not make their lives any harder, that won't make things any more challenging or difficult. I paid $50,000 for my house. It's almost paid for. Grandma moved out earlier this year. They're renting her house out for almost $1,300. I mean, y'all done sold the city. I just need a cave, somebody put me in it, roll a rock up to it, and just let me stay there, because I don't know if we're gonna recover from what's going on, but I don't think cutting back with doing what you're gonna do, whatever the commissions, have some more meetings. Gentleman sat in that seat years ago, he had a working group. They had representatives from the commissions coming together, and I understand that y'all did the trainings and people came. Some people could make it, some people couldn't. You do the surveys. I don't have a computer, so doing something online is not feasible for me either. The emails will go out back and forth, Facebook, all that ridiculous stuff. Pick up a phone, call. I called and talked to Kevin in your office today. I called and talked to the different aides in the office today. So the other thing I want you to tell equality, I want you to look behind me and look at the representation in this room, the average age, the culture, ethnicity of the individuals, who's represented, you know, how many people do we have of different ethnicities, Somalis, Spanish, Asians, on our commissions, representing their communities. So I guess we'll see y'all when y'all pass this, because we already know this is going to happen. Thank you, and I'll talk to you Thursday.
Thank you, Commissioner. That brings us to the end of the public comment period for the hearing. I did want to allow my colleague, Councilmember Remy, to make any closing remarks if he has any.
Again, thank you for all the work that was put into this. It's great to have all the people that did come down and speak their concerns, and certainly we'll be taking those things under advisement. This has not been passed yet, and certain things in the proposal that I want to have addressed before we do go to that point. And I think that Chair Dorans and I will be discussing as well as with the rest of my colleagues, but certainly appreciate everyone's time for coming down this evening, and thank you for all the work that's been put into this.
Thank you, Councilmember Remy. Does the department have any closing comments you'd like to make at this point?
Thank you, Chair Dorans, and thank you, Councilmember Remy. And again, thank you to the area commissioners and community residents that came out this evening. I just want you to know that our department and our team, we appreciate you. We appreciate the work that you do on behalf of our city every day, and we don't take that for granted. We understand that, you know, it's not always a glamorous job, but our city can't grow without the area commissioners and the folks that we have that are helping to move these wheels along. So thank you again, and look forward to our next steps.
Thank you, Director. Just to echo Councilmember Remy and certainly the Director, again, I just appreciate everyone coming down this evening and sharing their point of view on this. Again, I think the specific code changes in front of us, you know, we've had the ability tonight to really drill down to, I think, to what those potentially could do and make changes with the commissions. And then the neighborhood's best practices template, I think we've had a lot of discussion around tonight, and certainly there's, I think, a healthy interest in that being a sort of living document for the department to continue to work with commissions to adopt best practices that other folks have found successful in different areas of the city. I want to emphasize as well that this legislation will appear on our agenda at the next council meeting. There's still an opportunity to weigh in with myself, Councilmember Remy, other members of council about these potential changes. You can reach my office at 614-645-8201. You can also email me at radorans, D-O-R-A-N-S, at columbus.gov. As the ordinances currently stand, ordinance number 2952 to enact these proposals will appear for passage on our agenda at our next Columbus City Council meeting held this Monday at December 9th at 5 p.m. Again, if folks are interested in reaching out to myself or any other members of City Council, you can certainly get on Columbus City Council or columbus.gov/City Council and get all of our contact information. And again, want to appreciate folks taking time out of their lives to not only be here this evening, but to really be that true neighborhood voice. It's been certainly one of the pleasures of my time on City Council to have interacted with a lot of you on a variety of different issues and to have been out to a lot of your different area commissions, and certainly something that I'm going to continue to do on a regular basis during my time on council to make sure that folks have an opportunity to weigh in on decisions that are being made here at the city. So with that, this hearing is adjourned, and I appreciate everyone being here.